Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here. Today's video I'm going to be doing my June wrap up, all of the books I read in the month of June. And so really quickly out of the way, I just want to direct your attention to a vlog I did for the book Behooved by M. Stevenson. I have a whole video talking about this book, so I'm not going to be mentioning this here, but this is kind of a fun romantasy, more like a cozy fantasy adventure in my opinion. So check out that vlog if you want to hear further thoughts and feelings about this book. First category of books we're going to talk about are classics. I'm going to run through these really quick because the video after this is going to be a deep dive into this author's work and I'll just talk about these very quickly. We have Mansfield Park and Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I did not like Mansfield Park. This is a very strange romance. It is a romance, but it's between first cousins, and that's super weird. And our main character, Fanny, I actually enjoyed her as a character. She's a little bit more soft-spoken, a little bit more demure, a little bit more like a quiet heroine, and I actually really appreciated her as a character. But the love interest, her first cousin Edmund, was a piece of crap. I really didn't like him, and they grew up together, so it's just extra weird. My big gripe with Edmund is that he is basically crushing on another woman the whole book, and then when that woman turns out to be not what he expected, he's like, oh yeah, Fanny over there, and then pursues her. And I don't think anyone should be a second choice as a romantic partner. I think you should be chosen first. And so that's kind of why I didn't love Mansfield Park. Lady Susan is an epistolary style novella detailing the story of this widower who is not a very nice person, and she is, trying to get remarried and get her daughter married off well. And this is told through a series of letters. And I thought it was interesting in terms of telling the story. I didn't love it as a narrative necessarily. Lady Susan obviously is pretty abhorrent. She doesn't really love her daughter, which is kind of disgusting. And the story's pretty straightforward. This is Jane Austen's first published work. She was trying out a couple of things in this one and it didn't totally land, so I ended up giving Mansfield Park 2.5 stars, and I gave Lady Susan 3 stars. But check out my Jane Austen video coming soon. Really quickly, in the manga category, I read the next volume of A Man and His Cat, volume 12. I kind of have the same opinion as volume 11 as I do about 12, which is the series is starting to feel like we're adding more side characters and we're focusing on those side characters' stories a little bit more than we are our main character, Kanda, and his narrative. He's starting to overcome some of his performance anxiety, but it really hasn't progressed in many volumes. It's so fun to see the cats in these stories, which is why I keep reading. The cats are so fun and wholesome and charming. But we're getting to a point in the manga series where I'm like, okay, can we make some character growth here? So I gave this one 4 stars. Still a great series. I am going to continue, but not as good as the first, 10 volumes of the series, which I thought have been slam dunks up until volume 11, 12. We have a lot of fantasy books to talk about. Really quickly, I'm going to breeze through Blood and Steel by Helen Scher. This is contemporary. This is a romantasy story, and my biggest critique of this is that it feels too modern. These characters don't feel like they fit into the world that they are set in, which is like they have like modern slang, modern ways of speaking to each other, and modern sensibilities, which having modern sensibilities in fantasy is usually good with me. Like, please do that. But there was such a big disconnect between the world building and like trying to feel grounded in this world, and then these characters using slang from our era that just like threw me out of the story completely. I will say, to this book's credit, it was very engaging. I kind of wanted to keep reading it, even though I wasn't having the best time. There's a lot of telling versus showing in this one, in my opinion. As for a romance, I thought the I love you was very undeserved. I don't think these characters do enough relationship building, in my opinion, for the I love you to feel like it's earned. And as a fantasy, I thought the fantasy elements were just okay. I ended up giving this 2 stars. Keep in mind, I am notoriously picky about romantasy. I like romance and I like fantasy, and not very often do I like the combination. So keep that in mind, but this one was just a 2-star for me personally. Then we have Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. This is about a lady knight and kind of a dragon slayer type novella. And this is my second novel or novella by this author, and I didn't love this. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I thought it was fine. This is sapphic, which is great. Our knight wears armor all the time as sort of literal like emotional protection as well as physical protection. So we kind of deal with this like kind of emotionally closed off character. I thought the story was predictable and very straightforward, and it didn't have a ton of depth for me. And so I'm wondering if this author and this is the second book by them I didn't love. So maybe it's just a me and this author thing not really working out, which is all right. And for the rest of the video, these are all books I really enjoyed. So I had a great reading month in June. Let's keep talking about fantasy books. We have Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, which is the 3rd book and final book in the Emily Wilde trilogy. This is a cozy romantasy trilogy following Emily Wilde, who is heavily autistic, and her academic rival, Wendell Bambleby, going on some adventures, and has to do with fae, but it is like a historical fantasy historical fiction mixed with fae. This series gives off Marie Brennan, The Natural History of Dragons, like that whole series vibes, kind of the historical fantasy with a hint of romance type vibe. I enjoyed this series. It's not one of my all-time favorites. I gave the 3rd book in this series a 3.5 stars. Really enjoyed in general. It's just not one of my favorites, and it's not going to stick with me. I think the 1st book in the series is excellent. I really enjoy book 1 of this series, and then the 2nd and 3rd were just like solid, but not favorites, if that makes sense. I would recommend this series. I think it was a lot of fun and kind of cozy, but also had some darkness to it, dealing with the fae. Then we have The Warden by Daniel M. Ford. I picked this up because of this cover. I literally bought this book because I saw this cover and I was like, that looks gay. And it was. This is about a main character who is just graduates, like top of her class from the 3 separate schools of magic, and she's been training to be warden, which is a type of kind of like a sheriff, magician, healer, kind of all in one, and they get stationed around this kingdom, dispensing justice, healing, kind of being a mediator, doing all that sort of stuff. And so she is actually stationed at like the edge of civilization, even though she graduated top of her class. And this is about her moving to that small town, getting acclimated, getting to know the townsfolk, having adventures. This, I mean this lovingly, reads like a D&D campaign. And I mean that with respect. It has D&D vibes in terms of the races, the world building a little bit. I mean, it's different. It is not set in the D&D world, but it just evokes that world and has similar like races. And the magic was interesting. She has to channel her magic through a wand, which is kind of fun. It does feel episodic, I will say. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. This is a very adventurous story. But it does have that D&D, like this episode on D&D and like this session of D&D. So I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. It's a trilogy. I'm going to continue with the series. It is sapphic. I enjoyed the little hint of romance we got in here. Yeah, I don't have many bad things to say about this one. I really enjoyed it. Had a great time. Another 4-star read for me is the short story Nicholas Sayre and the Creature in the Case. And this is really interesting because The Old Kingdom by Garth Nix is a series that I reread over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. And it's one of my comfort series. I love it so deeply. And I've never read this short story set in this world. So this actually takes place between books 3 and 4. It's counted as like 3.5 of the series. And I thought this was kind of fun. It was kind of like, it gave off like mystery vibes, like secluded manor, something nefarious is going on, espionage kind of vibes. It was actually really interesting. It's very different from the main books of the series in that we're not following one of the necromancers. We're following someone who doesn't really have magic, and kind of seeing the fallout for the end of the first 3 books, because that's like a very conclusive arc, and kind of seeing some of the fallout was interesting. Again, I gave this 4 stars. I thought this was a fun little adventure. Great to see what Nicholas is up to after the events of the series, or the first 3 books of the series. I enjoyed it. I don't want to give too much away because it's only like 70 pages or something like that. Really short, so yeah, I'm just surprised I've never read this before, but I finally like tracked it down and read it, and I was like pleasantly surprised. So yeah, 4 stars. Then we have another novella, The River Has Roots by Amel El Motar. This is about 2 sisters, Esther and Isabel, and they are part of a family that tends to like a magical grove, and their land like abuts the land of fairy. And so we're dealing with fae. This is also sapphic, so we're reading lots of queer books in June, as I do all year round, but especially in June. And this is really a story about sisterhood and family, and like a fae adjacent adventure, I'd say. I really enjoyed this. I thought the vibes were immaculate. Amel El Motar does not miss in terms of vibes. Her other work, This Is How You Lose the Time War, is heavily featured on this channel, and I absolutely love this book. And I think she did a really good job with this one as well. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think it's like a new favorite. I don't think it's on the level of This Is How You Lose the Time War, but I thought this was an excellent story of sisterhood, which really resonates with me because I have 2 siblings, 2 sisters that I adore. Oh, now we're getting into some new favorites. We've got Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castile, and this is a historical fantasy kind of inspired by the 3 Musketeers. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I love the 3 Musketeers. The 90s version, not whatever this monstrosity was. I didn't even watch it because the trailers looked bad for it. But the 90s version with these actors, I'm obsessed with it. I read the book. I really enjoyed the book too. I love all things 3 Musketeers. So I'm going to talk about this book in a way that might spoil the 3 Musketeers or might assume you understand the story of the 3 Musketeers, but so we're following basically one main character, and his name is Falchio, and he was part of this group of kind of Kingsguard-like people. He was very close to the king and was part of this organization, and they were also like, in the 3 Musketeers world, they were like the king's right arm. They would go out and dispense justice. They were like this very I don't know how to describe it. I'm struggling a little bit. This very elite group of warriors that would go out and do the bidding of the king, dispense justice, and it was all about like doing the right thing. And in this world, the king was actually a decent human being, so the justice was good. But before the start of the book, the king is murdered, and the Great Cloaks, or Great Coats, which is this group, was disbanded. And so we're following Falchio in the wake several years after the Great Coats have been disbanded, And he and his two friends who were a part of the Greatcoats as well, are framed for a murder they did not commit. So they are a little bit on the run and a little bit trying to clear their name, and adventure and hijinks ensue. And there's also a larger political plot that has to do with the dukes that had a hand in murdering the king, wanting to snap up power for themselves. I thought this was excellent. Like I said, I love all things Three Musketeers. I thought this was a fabulous adventure. This has some darkness to it. It's not super on page, but there are some torturing moments. There's some mentions of pretty disturbing torture in this, but it's not like on page described. There is like off page things that happen that are mentioned. So I just wanted to put that out there. Falkio also has a dead wife. If you're familiar with the character Athos from Three Musketeers, he also had a wife who was like dead, and has some trauma surrounding that. So Falkio's kind of based on Athos, in my opinion. He's like Athos and D'Artagnan kind of mixed together, if you know the characters I'm talking about. So there is that. And there was also like a scene towards the end with like some dubious consent, but it ends up being okay. So I just want to throw that out there as a couple of like warnings about this book, but overall I wouldn't say this book was super dark or anything like that. It just had a couple of moments that didn't make it perfect for me, but overall I thought this was a fabulous adventure. This is a completed series. And I will be continuing. I believe it's a quartet, which is awesome. I love a quartet. It's very rare in like epic fantasy. The other thing that I didn't sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm really excited about this one. Is that one thing I didn't love is that the fantasy elements were very minor. This was almost just historical fiction with like, a dash of fantasy, and that's not usually my preference, but I had so much fun with the plot and the characters of this one that I didn't super mind the lack of fantasy. But honestly, you could take the fantasy elements out of this one and it would have been, in my opinion, almost the same story. But overall, I really liked this. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, just for those couple of things that didn't quite land for me perfectly, but a great fantasy if you're looking for a great adventure. Then we have Spear by Nicola Griffin, which is a queer Arthurian legend. It's not even a retelling. It's like Arthurian adjacent, because this book, novella, introduces characters like on the periphery of the Arthurian legend that never existed, and kind of inserts them into the Arthurian legend and says like, these are how these characters, like, it's kind of, I mean this in a nice way, but it's like kind of like fan fiction a little bit. Like, you already know the story of Arthurian legend, let's insert some queer characters to see how they, you know, would fit in with this whole thing. I really liked this. I thought this was unpredictable. I loved the twist on the Arthurian legend. I'm a big Arthurian legend person. And I thought this was really interesting because I read the author's note at the end, and the author mentioned that this work was supposed to be a part of the Queer Arthurian Retelling collection that I also read, which is called Sword Stone Table. I read that and I was like, she talks about how like this story ended up being too long for that collection, and she ended up publishing it separately. But I was like, I could totally see this book fitting really well into that collection, which I also enjoyed overall. I wrote in my notes that I think this is a perfect novella, which is high praise. It's really hard to nail novellas while having your story pack a punch, and packing everything into such a short space is really hard, and I think this does it perfectly. I love the inclusion of our queer characters, our queer main character. I thought this was excellent, and I gave it 5 stars. Definitely new favorite. I really like this. I want to read other Nicola Griffin works now. I'm really pleased. I highly recommend this one a lot. And it's short, but it packs such a good punch. And those are all the fantasy books I read. Oh my gosh, so many fantasy. I'm gonna talk about sci-fi next. I think this might be, I go back and forth whether this is the best thing I read this month, but it's definitely tied for the top spot. These Burning Stars. This was so freaking good. Oh my gosh. This is a multi-POV, multi-timeline told story. And it's kind of like Catch Me If You Can, set as a space opera with heavy politics. Yes, please. Everything about this book was fabulous. We have 3 women at the center of this story. One who is a thief who steals something, and then the 2 other characters are kind of hunting that person down, but they also have someone hunting them down at the same time from their past. This was so good. The twists and turns, the plot was intense, it was unpredictable. It had a couple of twists where I was like, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming. This was epic. This was everything I like about space opera, truly, in one go. I've talked about Megan E. O'Keefe on this channel quite a bit. I really enjoy Megan E. O'Keefe's work. She kind of writes these like epic space opera adventures. And I'd say These Burning Stars is very similar to that. So if you like one, you might like the other. But I will say These Burning Stars has a little bit of darkness, a little bit of grit to it that Megan E. O'Keefe has, but it's more of a lighthearted tone overall. This has a little bit more grit and darkness, and the tone is a little bit more serious. Some of the themes are a little bit more intense. We're kind of dealing with like obsession. We're talking about a genocide in this one, a previous genocide that happened, and all of the politics around that. So this one has like a little bit more intensity, a little bit deeper themes. Not necessarily deeper themes, more intense themes than Megan E. O'Keefe, but I think these 2 authors complement each other so well. If you like one, you'd like the other. This is a new favorite. I absolutely loved this. The world building was fabulous. The adventure was fast-paced. The plot was amazing. The characters were so intriguing, even though they weren't like good people necessarily, which is my favorite. I can't believe this is a debut. I wrote in my notes like, this is a debut? Very impressive for a debut. I thought this was fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. I need to stop talking about it now. I will continue. I believe the whole trilogy is published now, which is incredible, or will be very, very soon. So I can't wait to continue. Incredible. 5 out of 5 stars. Hello, editing Hannah here. I decided to pull out the final books for this particular video and make a separate review because I spent like 5 minutes talking about those 2 books, the best books I read in June, and this video is already super long. So I will post a separate review of 2 additional books that I read in June, so be on the lookout for that. But that's why I don't talk about the best books I read in this video. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. Those are all the books I read in June. So many good things. I only had a couple of things that I didn't love. I had overall an amazing reading month. What were your favorite reads of June? I would love to know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon.